So I graduated here in 1986. To be able to use a video camera in those days, we had to go to college. There were 2 here that were broadcast quality and 4 VHS for the student population. So that was how we got to put our hands on cameras 40 years ago. I went to television news, shot for 5 or 6 years, went into a corporate facility, which was big in those days. A lot of companies now, if you don't know, have television studios. I've worked at Georgia Pacific, downtown Atlanta, and Home Depot, Chick-fil-A. All these companies now have their own video departments. Delta worked with a lot of smaller companies. That's more of the business there. But there's a business segment there for you guys if you're interested. Probably shooting with something better than your phone, but this is a place to start. But again, you guys can tell stories visually from the time you were in high school. You may or may not have even had a video department in school. We surely did not. In fact, my first class here, Introduction to Production, we actually shot on film. Little Super 8 millimeter film cameras that we took to Kmart, which is where the Holly Hobby or something there is in Atlanta Highway, and sent your film off to be developed. So you didn't know what you had until a week later when it came back from the being developed. This is Edison's first here in America. This is where they first started making moving pictures. The camera was 1,000 pounds, and so they had to bolt it to the ground so it couldn't fall on somebody and kill them or remove an appendage. So they made a studio on top of the building where they were developing it, and they had to have so much light that they would turn the building with the sun as the sun moved. So we've gone from that in the 1890s. Oh, and roughly the same time in France, the Lumiere brothers were coming up with a portable film camera that only weighed 100 pounds, and they could take it out on location. And it also acted as the projector, not unlike your phone and other things where you can play back from the thing you shot from. I like this just because it's European art from the 20s, I think, forecasting that women would be independent because they're wearing pants and they're smoking. This is, I think, the 1920s. They've flown into some place cool. One is talking to her boyfriend, and the other's checking on her baby with some sort of phone mirroring device, which, 100 years later, hey, we got them. Who knew? That's one of my favorite ads from the 40s. The telephone company saying, we'll bring you the television. Oh, little did they know. This is how, now you guys are what class? Social justice?
This is multi-platform, that's reporting. So this is
reporting, okay. So it's news, but it's not necessarily. It's kind of newsy.
It's news, more feature and more in-depth reporting.
Gotcha. I still like this. There's a guy watching television at home in the 40s with while a helicopter with a camera is shooting this people being, burned to death on the roof of the building with smoke inhalation. But you can watch it from home. But again, a nice forecast. And that was my house in the 1960s and early 70s. This is in Rome, Georgia. It is a more modern picture, but it was sold in 1974 for $24,000. Nice sum of money back in those days. A couple of years later, the first video camera comes out that is in mass production for television news. It's $35,000. So to get a video camera, without a lens, without a way to record onto, and no batteries, it still costs you more than a house, at least a house in Rome, Georgia. I like this one because we've moved to 1-inch tape, moved away from film to 1-inch tape at this point. Here again, roughly the 70s, and it's light enough for a girl to carry is what they're trying to show, and a young one at that, I guess. Put it on a model, but that's 1-inch tape. The tape is literally 1 inch wide, and it only weighs 15 pounds, the recorder, not the camera, the recorder. That's kind of the deal that we had in our day. When I was here, when I started out, you had a camera, you had a record deck, and this, from this ad, they counted up, I think 72 pounds, somewhere on there. This is the tape we had to record onto. You guys have cards for your DSLR and, of course, your phone. 20 minutes. It's basically the size of a hotel Bible. Got you 20 minutes of record time that you would use again because it was too expensive to use once and just store, but any raw footage was generally lost after that day's shoot because you'd save the edited copy and then move on to record over it because you got about 20 passes before we started reusing them. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. For you guys going out, I was asked about how to shoot interviews, how to put a camera on somebody, right, and mic them. So the first thing you guys will want to do, because we've got some lights that y'all can use, but at least if you want to use natural and available or whatever's in the room, just to walk in with your phone and hopefully a tripod. Those are the kind of things, this is the difference you're looking to get. Now this is obviously, the guy on the right's lit, one on the left is obviously not. If I stand directly under this light, I'll probably raccoon a little, get some dark spots under here. It's a nice soft light in this room. If I'm over here, well, that's not a good, I'm between the lights maybe it's darker. If you can't see this part, well, maybe you can. Let's see if I can get the phone up here. One of the ironies is I don't shoot with this. I'm talking about it, but I don't shoot with it because I've always used like a real camera. I'll send video of our cats and dogs to our daughters who are grown, but that's about the extent of it. But a lot of the principles are the same. If I'm out here under the light, if you've got the chance to put somebody under some light, should be fairly well lit. I can't really see, so, you know. But if you have them here where there isn't any light, I'm hopefully the background is a lot brighter. My point being, look at the room where you're going to put somebody, see where the light is, see where it isn't, and try to place them if they'll let you. You know, if you've got to go do an interview in someone's office, you really don't have too much of an option. Let's see what it would look like in Relisa's office, since we've got all this cool mobile technology. Her desk faces the wall. Then you've got to make a choice of where you put somebody. So many interviews you guys do, or people do, is across the desk when you go to someone's office. You can also ask them to go outside. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, or face a window.
Very true, if there is one.
If there is one.
Right. I didn't know it was going to do that, man. That stinks. Hampered by technology yet again. But you see the point, like, the principle to understand is our human eye, the naked eye, got about 1,000 to 1 contrast ratio. We can see things happening out during a sunny day, but under the bus where it's dark, when the bus is going by, you can still see the road. Film has about 100 to 1, and video has about 10 to 1 contrast ratio. What that means is you've got to try to get your world that you're shooting, everything from here, if it's out like this in the real world, down to in here somewhere. So you've got about a 10 to 1 contrast ratio. If I'm shooting that bus outside on a sunny day, it's just black under the bus. But our eyes can see it. You have to kind of take that into account when you're thinking about where you're going to put someone. Your job, one of which, is to make the person who you're recording look as good as they think they do. Now that can be tough. That's why we have lights. That's why we have makeup and other things. You're not getting that far down the road. But you want to make them look good. The last thing, my first job in Savannah, we had to white balance the camera and the lights were different. You know, when you went on air, we didn't have color correction, so we had to put him on the air that night blue. It was the wrong color for his skin tone was blue, his office was blue, everything was wrong. And he got pissed, and rightly so, that, you guys made it look like crap on camera. Well, but it's also the 109 market, and we're number 2. We're the number 2 station in the 109 market. We're all starting out. We're all learning, and that's part of. But you're trying to get people to look as good as you can in the moment. You want to eyeball the office or the space that they're in. If they have a conference room, you can set up in there, whatever makes the most sense. I see this a good bit. You'll have somebody like, okay, now tell me about, whatever, up against the wall or right here. Give them as much space as you can. We'll talk about it in a minute, but like if camera's here and I've got that much room behind me, hopefully the background's out of focus, or at least a little bit. The reason you want to do that is that, that's a nice shot. Just go back. The reason you want to do that is any image you see is on a 2-dimensional plane. Newspapers are gone away, magazines, screens, television, film, whatever. But we don't live in a 2-dimensional world, thank goodness. We're 3-dimensional. We're used to seeing things pop out and move and change. So part of our job is to try to make the images that you're showing as 3-dimensional as possible, even though we're shooting, they're going to see it on a 2-dimensional screen. And there's a couple of ways to do that. And I know I'm all over the place, but that's why I'm not a teacher. Here's a decent example. The background's out of focus. Now they use lights on this. They've got a key light, which is the main light on the guy's face, and a light over here to kind of give him some edge, called a greaser sometimes, or an edge or a rim. And it helps separate him from the background, but also what separates him is the fact that the background's out of focus. He's not part of or mushed into the background. Now, I haven't shot, again, I'm no expert on phone video, but if you shoot cinematic, if most of you have those options on your phone, that on a sit-down interview, whether you know the subject isn't moving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, you're not chasing them like at a soccer game or something, you know. They're in one stationary spot. You got a good chance of keeping them in focus and letting the background go, and it's going to help. Now, again, this guy's really lit, and pardon me, my wife does all the talking at home. I'm not used to this much. Already got dry mouth. But one of the things when you're setting up your interview is called the 1/3 line. It's just an aesthetic. There's no rule that's written down anywhere for this, but that's what used to be called broadcast standard, industry standard. Now anything is broadcast standard.
Rule of thirds is what they.
Yeah, is that what you've talked about? The 1/3? So they've cut this up into a grid of thirds, right? Subject's eyes, you see the top of their head, which is good, but you don't need to see this much of it. You just need to see the little top of it. Eyes are on the 1/3 line. And there's a room where, if you've gotten into lower thirds, I don't know yet, where far, you know, they put a name, superimpose the name, the super, underneath. There's room for that. We used to say we don't want them chewing on their supers. So if you're that close, you know, their mouth is into their name. So, and it's a third to the left, if that makes sense. You've got what's called look space when you're set up for your interview. Now, they're not looking at camera. This doesn't apply. One, if you're in New York, because for whatever reason, those Yankees up north want everybody centered, or at least they do when I would try to sell them this. No, center him up. Like, but he's looking off camera. Anyway. But everyone else in the U.S. shoots like this, typically. Unless they're looking at camera, and then you center them up. That makes sense? You've seen enough Zoom calls where there's like way too much headroom. It's up the nose. You know, the other thing about this shot is that the camera is on the eye line. It's on the level of. Very few people, if any, look good from down here. We always talk to each other on our eye line, you know, eye to eye, or a little above. That helps. If you got a little scruff under the neck like I do or whatever, a little bit above is fine. But those are just some, and I know I'm all over the place, but those are just some simple rules for framing a shot. When you get to lighting, seeing the person is number one as far as for an interview. Hearing them is actually more important. There's no saying in our business that audio without video is radio, video without audio is surveillance. It's more important to hear them than to see them. And Professor Cantrell brought up a good point a couple of weeks ago that if you go out and do an interview and you come back and the audio is okay, but for whatever reason the picture's so ugly you don't want to put it up or there's some issue with it, you can always go to the website or whatever and throw up a photo of the person you talk to, but get the audio. Them we call lip flap, with no sound, doesn't do squat, unless you're a lip reader. And there's maybe, I don't know, 1% of those watching TV or watching your video at that point. So good audio is most important. Good videos is next, and then good video. Sorry. You can see they've got, so whoever shot this paid some attention to lighting. Again, and we'll get to this in a minute. I've got some lighting you guys can use. But there's enough on his face to where the cheeks are lit and it starts dropping off. Again, what we're trying to make it look round, but also have some, it's called modeling, but some feature to it. That's the flat lighting. That's my ID from 1984 when I slept in my car outside of, 1984. I had to sleep in the car outside of Brumby because I couldn't get in for orientation. So I got here about midnight and walked down into Tate, and that was the first thing. But it's the typical DMV photo where there's no depth. I might as well be a paper plate, right? Lighting-wise, art-wise, artistically, you know, it's just like, it's flat. Yeah, exactly. It works. I'm not saying this is a bad thing because I'm not giving the grades anyway. But you would rather have, there's some features you can see, cheekbones, the light kind of falling off, as opposed to the flat. Here's a good example of something I'd shot for the law school. You can see that you see her cheeks, and then it drops off again to where there is some sense of proportion to her face, as opposed to just being a paper plate. And we've got a little bit of light on the background and a little bit of light on her hair. Charlene Hunter Galt, the first African-American to graduate. No, that's not right. Enroll. Mary Frances graduated first, but Charlene Hunter Galt enrolled first, black or African American, along with. I always forget his name. I can see his face, and I've gone blank. But anyway, I got to interview her. Same thing. Now, this is not what your interviews are going to look like, but I'm kind of giving you an idea of the level that I do, but also like what you're trying to go for here. I hate that X in the middle, but it will. It's a little brighter on one side of the face than the other. If you can help that, that's great. That's what gives it some sort of sense of being alive, and again, not a flat paper plate. The background's out of focus. It's an interesting background. It doesn't go to mush. Like I was telling you about the 10% or 10 to 1 contrast ratio, the lights aren't brighter, except for those two little pendant lights, aren't brighter than her, but neither does it drop off into blackness, or just like if we didn't throw any light at all, it would look like she might be in a cave or a garage or something. You don't know. So when you can, light the background. There's old Coach Dooley, R.I.P., but in his house, I put a poop ton of makeup on him, and he still came off shiny. I never figured this one out because it was nice soft lighting and everything. But you still get the sense of the fact that there's some roundness to his face, a little brighter over here than that. There's an edge light over here, and there's an interesting background with some light on it so that it's roughly the same. It's called luminance, brightness all the way across, but you don't have to look at the back. You're not distracted, hopefully, by the background, but it makes a pleasant one. You can shoot outdoors. That's always a good option, but there are parameters to that, too, on the lighting side. This young lady, I think she was news. I think she was journalism. I'm pretty sure she was journalism. She hosted a video that we shot. We've got the sun as her backlight, and we're bouncing the sun back onto her for a nice soft look, as opposed to being all like garish, which we'll get to. But you can't do that at noon, right? Because the sun's way up here at noon. You gotta sneak up on the sun. You gotta wait for it to come up. So this is like 8 o'clock at the stadium in a May day in May or early June, and the sun's just coming up above, and we just have to bounce some light back into her face to get some nice soft features. Another outdoor shot, just as an example, head of the ecology school of ecology. But this has got the sun's behind her again. It's not smack dab in her face, and I'll give you another example here shortly. But if you're going to do these outside, and if you don't want to take some lights, you want to keep it relatively easy to do for your storytelling, for your interviews. Take them outside if it's a nice day, and you're not next to an interstate. The fun of taking them outside is you don't know what the sound's going to be, Yes, ma'am?
Can you explain how you balance that light?
This one?
Yeah, how you balance it?
Well, we use,
With the
yeah,
student,
and
you
it's
use a
probably
special-
not fair to talk about that here in that you guys aren't going to be taking out the kind of tools that I did, but I've got a 4 foot by 4 foot, looks like white cardboard. It's called foam core, and we'll sit it up in a C-stand, and that'll bounce it up. But here's,
So
sorry about the subject matter.
How can they light up someone in natural light outside without having those other tools?
Yeah, I'll get to that right here,
Great.
actually. Thank you for the good lead-in. If you interview someone out on a sunny day, like I did here last year, and this is for my class, on the production class, that's okay. Like you see everything, right? Everything's fairly evenly lit. There's not a lot of dimension to the face other than a little bit of a cheekbone there, thank God, but it's pretty flat. But if I just turn around, I'm in the same spot. This is this. Those are the same exact spot. I just did a 180. So now I'm using the building, like you were talking about, as my light, and the sun's behind me. That make sense? A little too much light on the top. I'd love to carve that top light out. It's a little too bright, but otherwise that's a decent shot for not setting anything up. So if you're going to and I recommend, I don't know how much of a turnaround, if this isn't news, if you're doing reporting, if you can get out to talk to somebody, if you're going to talk to somebody on camera, and your schedule and their schedule allows, go out and do a pre-interview. See what their office looks like so you know what you're walking into. Build a rapport, because it's very awkward to I just met you and I'm going to put a camera on you and you better not screw up because I'm going to use it against you. See, there's that going through their mind. You build a rapport, let them know you're on their side, and they're helping you by doing the part of the story, but hopefully they're doing something newsworthy enough and good. I don't know if you're going to do stories on, escaped convicts or whatever, but if you're going to do something where they're helping the community, you're getting their word out too. So, you're helping each other out. But it's good to build a rapport before you go put a camera in front of them. And you see what their office looks like, if they can get outside. If they're next to a truck depot or an interstate, maybe you don't take them outside. If it's relatively quiet, take them out. Because then you're not trying to set up in their office while they're trying to get a job done, do their job. Because that's a consideration as well. Typically, on some of these bigger shoots that I'd shown you, I'm an hour, 45 minutes to set up, just to make them look nice, and then tweak it once I see them. You're not going to have that luxury. And that's not how news works and reporting works. So, but if you can get out to where they are, whatever your story is going to be, have a rapport with them so they're comfortable with you and you're getting along fine, great. But that's a good, again, I can't emphasize this enough. This is because this requires nothing other than a camera and that took setup. This young lady, I've got again, that white cardboard that I was telling you about, the foam cores, bouncing the sun back onto her. The sun's behind her. I'm slowing. You saw on mine, I mean, I'm getting off on a technical. You see how the top of my hair is on fire, as we would say. Hers is not, because I've got a white sheet, small one, flying over her head, and I've taken the way to fly the thing, and you don't see it on camera and all this going on. But again, remember too, everything's in that 10% band of luminosity, of luminance, of brightness. It gets kind of dark over here and dark over here, but there's sun glinting through, and it's hitting her, and I'm bouncing the sun back on her. It's a very pleasing shot. And again, your job is to make them look as good as they think they look if possible. But that's about it for that. Now, let me look at my list. Oh, well, no, I've got some more video. Yeah, warm up to somebody as much as you can beforehand to talk to them. Get them used to you, you get used to them. Build up trust as much as anything. Get there early. If you set up an interview, don't make them waiting on you. There's an old saying on the production side that early is on time and on time is late. You don't want to be asking them, you don't want to be too much ahead of their schedule. But if they're expecting you at 10:45, I got to be there in the secretary's office or wherever you are in the front of the building with your stuff at 10:40, 10:44. I guess this goes without saying. Again, I don't shoot with phones, so this doesn't occur to me all the time. But I guess you guys maybe already know, charge up your battery, the camera, or your phone the night before. Because the last thing you want to have, the last of many things you want to have is the phone die, if that's what you're recording with. Is that the plan for this class mostly? Okay. So you want to charge up your phone. Have space to record with. My phone's full. You know, a bunch of cat videos that I send my daughters. So I would have to dump a footage off. If you've got, I guess I've got 5 gigs of storage on my iPhone 14. If I've got 4.5 gigs of cat videos, I may not have time to do this story. And then I have to make a decision. Halfway through the interview, my phone is full. I've either got to reformat my camera, reformat it, dump all, well, that's what it would call if you're using a card. I don't know what it's called with a camera. But you would throw footage away in order to keep going, and then you got to make that decision on the fly. You want to think that through beforehand. Do a test, shoot 10 minutes the night before, see how many gigs that is or what percentage of a gig, and do the math. Okay, if I do a 30-minute interview, I'm going to need, if it's, I don't know. Anyway, you get what I went to journalism so I wouldn't have to do math. So I don't know what the math is going to be on that, but figure out how much, if you need a gig, you think you need a gig, then make sure you got a gig and do a test record the day before to see how much 10 minutes eats up. A lot of you have 4K capability on your phone. Great. But think about how much storage that's going to eat both on your phone and with, if you're editing, I assume you're going to edit. Are they editing on their own laptops or computers? I guess so, because we took them all out. The old ones that used to be here.
Whatever they want to use, yeah, they can use. They can even do it on
Wow. What y'all's plans? Just a couple of you, throw it out there. You're going to edit on like Adobe Premiere on your laptop, or are you going to, I'm seeing head nods, Cameron. But you can't cut it on your phone. So just think about the storage issue on that, where you're going to put it. We get students in the production side that want to shoot, raw 4K, and I think they fill up a 256 gig card with like 10 minutes of footage or something silly like that. So I know your phones won't be that way, but do consider it. Think about it before you go out there. Put it on silent. You don't want your phone ringing, and ask the person you're talking to if they don't mind. silencing their phone so you don't get halfway through your interview and there's a phone ring. It's easy to start back over, or not start completely over, but pick up from there and make an edit. Softest light you can find where the background matches. What I mean by that is I don't know why anybody would do this. If they're in an office with the black walls, God knows why, but the camera would not like this. You're not going to be futzing around probably with your exposure. You want to let the camera make that decision. If you do, the camera's going to have a hard time between this face and that black behind me. That black behind me. Get something closer to, and interesting if you can, but anything other than, let's say, a black person in front of a white wall, a white person in front of a black wall. Again, we don't like contrast. Do y'all know what the PAF is upstairs, Peyton Anderson Forum? Imagine if we're in there and that wall here is the one where the garage door is, and there's daylight coming in. You can use that as your light. You can, if we have the person face the light, you'll wind up with that DMV photo like I have on my student ID. But if you have them, and assuming they're sitting, and that's your light source over here, the daylight coming in, that's soft light because it faces the north, so it's not going to come in real harsh and have a bunch of hard shadows. But if this is a wall of windows set up over here so that your person is looking toward the light as opposed to away from it, if the camera's over here and you, the interviewer, are here, actually reverse that. The camera's here, interviewer's here, I'm looking away from my light. Camera's here and you are here, the person being interviewed is looking toward the light. Just kind of think that through. They'll look a lot better looking toward their light and being well lit than away from their light. That make sense? It's great. They always look better. We'll do interviews outside for ESPN and Fox Sports and network stuff, and we'll still put a light on the camera, a little backlight on them outside, just to give them that dot in the eye. Is what Release is talking about. So you guys, if you get a tripod from us, this is as high as these. We're going to give you these little dinky ones, and it's just for a day or two. I had to talk to somebody just a little while ago from, I guess, the other professor's class, like, can I keep it for 10 days? I was like, sorry, no, it has to be. We've got 200 students, roughly 50 cameras, and therefore 50 tripods, 50 lights. So we have to ask you to use it within a day or so, 3 at the most, so that other people have a chance. This is as tall as this tripod goes, and it's taken a good beating. But if you had to be up eye level, there is a post in here that you can then make that go back. And once you lock it, I hope this works. I tried it on another tripod, but I had to send it out. So if I get that locked, and it may not, you may have to shoot this person sitting down or come up with something else. So it's kind of locking. There. And now I'm on eye level. If I need to do a stand-up, are they going to do stand-up? They're on stand-ups, or is that optional, I guess? If you want to be on camera, so you'll need to get up on eye level, or if you're going to have the person stand. A lot of these, it's better if you have them sit for your interviews, in my opinion, because a lot of people get nervous and start doing this, and then on camera, all you see is this, and they're like on a boat, like rocking back and forth. In our little phone kits that Professor Shumway has devised, there is a couple of options. If you think you want to put a light on your phone, you can get this, ask for this guy, the bigger phone grip, you can call it that. It's got the springy thing, you put your phone in here. Now you can mount a light up here if you want, if you're having to do something that follows someone around. For simplicity's sake, I would do this, and most of our students, hey, look at there, like this. This came with a selfie stick, so if you want to do a walk and talk and stand up, here I am in the middle of Venezuela, whatever, being shot at by people, I don't know, whatever the story is. You can do that while you're moving around. But you can just take because this has got the little spring and an easier cell phone holder. Everything in the television world, mercifully, because it doesn't work this way ever, has almost the same screw size. Everything from lights to cameras to audio. That's a little rickety. You also want to know this ahead of time before you get out with your person you're going to interview. You probably don't have a way to monitor your audio, so again, that audio being critical, you'll want to do a test record the night before or when you get there. Just record something into the mic, play it back. If you don't hear anything, you got some troubleshooting to do. You got something to figure out. So obviously, I'd recommend doing it the night before, or even before you leave Grady. So under here, this is called a camera plate. While I was talking, I should have told you this. A little plate that has a thread on it that pops out. I'm guessing you guys have had experience at some form or fashion with this. I'm going to screw it into here. When people carried change, you could use a nickel or a quarter to do this. There's a slot, but now nobody has money anymore, so you're on your own. Maybe a key to get you into this. But all I'm doing is screwing the plate that comes with the tripod. Shouldn't take this long, but I am. So now it's on. I've got my cell phone holder. Let's see if our tripod's going to be sturdy enough to support this. And now I've got a place to put my phone, and it's on eye level if I'm outside, or rather if I'm doing a standing up in front of the camera. Again, and if you're at, hey, my daughter's calling from Hawaii. Hi. I'm in a class. Everything okay? Anything on fire? All right, love you. Bye. They're 5 hours behind, so she's on her way to work. Where was I? Okay, phone in here. Well, I would love to go. I would expect to do that. It is? Well, what the hell? Maybe it's because I'm recording. So don't get this tripod, kids. You can see this leaning. Let me stop recording. Does that make it change? Now it won't. These are the things I can't help you with because I'm used to using bigger cameras. So now it won't stop. There it goes. Grady gremlins. We have them. So obviously this isn't terribly stable, but it's going to be okay. I'm going to want my horizon to be level though. So in this tripod, I don't know how much y'all can see, there's a trigger back here. I can squeeze it and it'll let me rotate until I'm to the point where I think I'm level. Your phone has its own, I think it's a utility called Measure. It's got, and one of the things in there has a level. You can make sure your phone's level if you want to go through. There's also a bubble on here that I can look at, and one here to make sure I'm level. You want your platform level, whatever you're going to shoot when you're recording. Again, this tripod we have, you can squeeze this trigger and get it level. If it doesn't have that ability, if there's nowhere else, you have to level it with the legs. And you have to like extend one. Oh, it's too easy. You have to futz around with it a minute. So again, things that you want to get to your interview early for. Let me check my notes, Relitz, and then we'll get to what you're asking. No, that's good. No, so we were talking one or two person on camera. You were saying two people?
Two people, yeah.
Well, come here.
Interviewer,
Yeah. So you're saying
questions?
you want like this?
Yes, yes.
Where are you? You got to step in. Yeah. So we would be at least this close, probably closer. It's fine to be intimate when you're talking to somebody. You generally don't talk to somebody from a distance, but be comfortable.
We hear, yeah, the camera's there.
If you need to be on camera, then this works unless you're telling me, unless I'm misunderstanding. This works if you, the person doing the interview, needs to be on camera as well. What I've done in the past, which is
What about if you just do cutaways at the end of the interview, or you have where you're...
we can get to that.
and-
If you'll stand here, really, and look at me. Look at me. There you go. One thing you can do is tell folks what I've done 100 times: shoulders to the camera, and then eye contact with me. Now let me look. Keep looking at me because I can't. I'm used to going out with a producer, reporter, someone. So they're doing all this while I'm back here. I'm not used to doing this as a one-man band. But now we've seen the lovely and talented Relitza. We see both her eyes. She's looking just off camera, so we're not being. It doesn't feel weird that she's staring at me and telling me all these things that I don't know about, like there is in Zoom calls. You're eavesdropping on a conversation is how 90% of all television interviews have been done historically. And it's quite comfortable for the viewer. So this is the way I would do it: have one person on camera, and they would talk to me off camera. The goal has always been two eyes, if at all possible, if you're really good, like we got to be, 2 years, but they're still looking off camera. But it depends on where the desk is and all that. Keep looking the same spot over here. Nope, stay where you were. But look over here, look at my hand with it. So now it's further, like the further you get away, the less interesting it seems to be, technically, historically. We've always tried to put the reporter or the person next to the camera. If I set it up and Relitza looks at me and I turn to me, like, I wouldn't, I mean, there's a lot of reasons I wouldn't like that, but the fact that the eye contact is not anywhere near the camera would be disturbing. But again, back to if you're going to be on camera, we don't have to be that wide. Again, I'm used to a zoom rocker. I can, zoom in and check. Then we would be, ish, kabibble. I'm all backwards and everything. But we'd be profile. I don't like it, but if that's what's required, like you're doing MOS, man on the street interviews, and you want to be on, and that's required or not or whatever, this is the best way to do it. Yes, with one camera.
Yeah, so
It-
like you guys will be collecting sound bites from people on the street, so you can set up your camera like this, right?
Yeah.
And then when people walk over to you.
Or you wrestle them and bring them over.
Yeah.
It's usually what
You
happens.
have to sort of practice a little bit to know where you want for them to stand so that they are within.
If you need to be on camera. I keep going because what I would do, again, turn face the camera, if you will. I would hand them the microphone or put the lavalier mic on them, and I would stand next to it and say, "What's all this about buses running over students? What are you going to do about that?" I would
So
shape.
never surrender your microphone. That's
Well, we had a cable on it. I could always jerk it back. But
I would use, I would hold the mic and
yeah,
control.
but we don't have hand mics for phones.
Yes, that's
We only have lavaliers, and they're wired. They're not wireless. So if you're gonna try to put a mic on an athlete, it's not gonna work very well because they're not wireless. You'll have to move up to a camera.
Say
Say again?
You don't have the wireless and you just have the lavalier mic.
What
And you
about?
don't have time to mic up people because they're random people off the street. I guess your idea is to have them hold them.
I guess. You see it on these stupid TikTok reels, and I hate them. But yeah, I would always like, come here and take it and clip it on their lapel. When they walk up with a turtleneck, you're really screwed though, because there's just nowhere to. You can just pinch up the clothing, and although some of the clothes you guys wear these days, like your leotards out walking around, like I guess you just pinch it to the strap here. You got to figure it out. There's a problem because there's no one way to do it. I mean, the real way to do it is to have the way they do it at networks is to have an audio person and they fly in a boom. They fly it in like that, and there's no mic attached, but you're out there on your own to start with. When you've taken all the time you're allowed with your victim, right, the person you've talked to, hopefully you've written down your questions, turn the camera around, put it on you, look off camera, and ask the same questions. You don't have to, and you can nod a little bit like you're listening. You'll use that to add in, if you like the first part of a soundbite and the second part of the last soundbite, but you don't want that crap in the middle, you use the two soundbites, butt it up together, cut away to you listening, or something that's related. If hands are the worst case, somebody's hands. But hopefully you can turn. If you plan this, you'll shoot yourself listening and also asking the questions. That buys you more time on camera if you need it. If there's not any B-roll that's worth showing, you can ask the question on camera. You cut to the interview answer. You can cut to the wider shot if you want to. On the wide shot, make sure both of you are talking. At some point, the victim is just listening to you, so that if you want to use your voice from the question, from a different question necessarily, but they're listening to you, to figure out how to make your story work. The cutaways of the interview will save you a lot of trouble. But you guys these days, and I point to you like I'm the old man yelling, get off my lawn, yelling at clouds, but you guys are used to seeing jump cuts, and I see them all the time on TikTok. Even the presentations to camera on YouTube, like, this is how something works, and they'll just make jump cuts, what's called, where something was obviously missing from between the first bit of information and the second, but they just kept rolling and just cut out that middle. That's not professional. I don't know how Professor V is going to grade you on that, but figure out a way to try to not have a jump cut if you can. If you have the person walking down the street, if you need some B-roll of them, we always took them outside to walk down, up and down the street into the building. But if you see them walking in the street and then suddenly they're behind their desk, that's also a jump cut. Let somebody, if you're getting B-roll of the person you've talked to, walking down the hall, walking down the street out in front of the building, whatever, let them go in a door, They're going down the hall, let them go through the door, let them go past camera. As soon as they're off camera, you can go anywhere, at least the way we were taught in the professional realm of making real television news programming. Let them go out of frame, and then you can have them in the interview, or you can see them doing something else, if that makes sense. I know you guys are used to seeing jump cuts all day long, but I will make you watch Professor Shumway for a moment. He's going to explain sequencing. We shot this, obviously, during the pandemic from distance, what do they call it, distance learning, where the students were home, but it's hard to teach television production distance learning, but he was trying to. So we're going to skip, I've skipped the part about 6 feet away, we're wearing masks, but everything else here is very relevant, and I hope we've got audio.
So here we go.
Oh, crap. Let me go into settings. And audio, sounds. Feel free to tell me where to look, kids.
Turn up the audio on your laptop. That's
Well, I can do that. I don't know if they'll hear it, but into settings?
Yeah, settings, sound,
Where's sound? Oh, there it is.
mhm.
I should know this by now, doing it in studio and
And then it should be,
HDMI.
yeah.
Cool.
Mhm.
Let's see what happens now. That's why you have an engineer around, kids.
I've got it framed up, and I'm just going to start rolling and capture a wide shot of him working. I'm not going to bother him. I want him to be normal, doing his activity the way he would do it any other day at work. So I'll just start recording this shot, and I've got it framed up where I see Neil from about the waist up, and it's really kind of a wide to a medium shot, and you see the bench that he's working on. And now I'm going to tighten up a little bit and bring this into more of a close-up of just his, I'll focus.
Clear, that cutaway you would never ever use. That was our second camera so that the students at home could see what the hell is going on, you know, in the room that we're trying to shoot. So ignore that part, but pay attention to the one that Shumway is operating.
Close-up of just his, I'll focus just on his face right now. Kind of his face and hands, a little bit tighter shot, and I'll roll on that for a bit. Now I'll zoom in on his hands, record that just for a bit. His hands, tight shot of that working. Okay. And now let's get his face, and there we go.
2 or 3 seconds of each of these, but that's what in our world, in the camera person world, was a sequence. Wide, medium, tight, 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 before the camera ever moved. Now we have that luxury in this case of having a zoom lens where you can just push in with if you're shooting with your phone, I would consider putting the camera closer, zoom with your feet, get closer to the subject. But wide, medium, tight, 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 several different things before you ever change angles. Now a lot of these are going to be, a lot of the people you're going to interview are probably stuck, other than when I'm with the cameras, are stuck like me at the desk. So you're going to have to figure out creative ways to shoot somebody looking at the computer screen, typing, hands, eyes looking at the screen, maybe the screen if they'll let you. But if there's, hopefully whatever your subject matter is a little more exciting than this. But that's before we've ever changed anything. It was to wide, medium, tight, 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 and then Chris will move again.
And now I'll tilt back down and get even tighter on his hands, as tight as I can possibly get with my zoom lens. I don't want to, again, move the camera any closer than this, because we have to maintain our distance. And I just want the detail of his hands working with the equipment. And that's good. If you notice that what I've been doing is every time I hit the record button, I stop talking. I try to be as silent as I can because I just want to capture the natural sound of him working in this room. Now it's pretty quiet where he's working right now, but if you notice, it's probably creeping into my microphone. There's some construction in this building going off way down the hallway, so some of that is bleeding in. So if I were shooting B-roll here of Neil and it was a day where they were doing construction, I would have to deal with that a little bit, but at least this microphone on my camera is directional and it's pointed at Neil, so it should be picking up mostly that and not so much of this other noise that's coming in from down the hall. And I would just keep repeating this process, get wide, medium, tight, 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 as much as I can from this distance. One of the things I also do here before I start shooting the B-roll is ask the subject, well, what kind of tools are you going to work with? Are you right or left-handed? So I have an idea of where to anticipate the next move or the action, because I don't want to disturb him or interrupt him while he's working.
Do y'all know what have you talked about the 180 rule? the axis, not crossing the axis, and you've seen it all if you watch any football. The ball's going in this direction, going in this. Suddenly they cut to a replay of it going the wrong way. But they'll generally put a little graphic up, reverse angle, just so you know, why are they going the wrong way? You can confuse the viewer easily. If what he's meaning there is like if half the shots are of the guy working at this from this side, you know, like you're the camera, and then suddenly there's a cutaway of it going this way. It's like, did he spin around? Is there another thing that he's working? Like you've made them lose. They're trying to figure out what happened, and then therefore not listening to whatever the voiceover might be. So I always try to stay on whatever and it goes for your cutaways too, if you can at all possibly consider it. If the person being interviewed is looking this direction and camera's here and they're looking off, when you do your wider shot, if you do that, stay on that side, don't go over there. And then when you get your cutaway, if you're going to get a cutaway yourself, stay on this side of that same line. Just draw an imaginary line between the two people and stay on one side or the other. Don't go back and forth and back and forth. That's what he's talking about there.
I just want Neil to do his normal activity. I've got to capture spontaneous action and movement. But if I know a little bit about his routine ahead of time, I'll be prepared to shoot which hand is dominant, or if there's a particular tool he's going to use that he's going to have to reach over and pick up, I'll be kind of prepared for when he pauses. I can then quickly pan over, zoom, and reset my shot and focus on that object.
If you're doing a story on welding or glass blowers, have them do something beforehand so you see what's happening, so you don't get too close and get burned by the flame that's, you know, they're using to melt the glass with, or the sparks flying off the welding or whatever.
I also want to make sure that I don't get all my shots from this one set camera position, because that's going to get a little repetitive and it won't bring as much variety. But again, I have to stay at least 6 feet away. I do have a little bit of room to work with though. I can move the camera over that way and get a shot looking over Neil's shoulder down onto the workbench, and that would still maintain 6 feet of social distancing, plus it would keep me on that side of the line that we talked about in our B-roll guidelines. So I moved my camera just a few feet.
One way to get on the other side is to go to a direct cutaway. If we put because you're using your phone, this is one of the advantages. If we put a phone right where Neil's working, if he's doing this and I put the phone here, now I'm straight on, and then I can jump to either side. Does that make sense? Or you have a cutaway or whatever. In Hollywood, it used to be called the dog shot. You see it in old 40s movies. Two people sitting in a parlor talking, blah, blah, blah. They cut to the dog, and then they can go to either side. Once you get away from, you eliminate that line for a moment. That make sense?
From the original position, I'm still at least 6 feet away from my subject, still wearing masks, so is he. And now I have a little bit different camera angle because I want that visual variety. So I can look over his shoulder at the workbench. I can still get close-ups of whatever his hands are doing, the equipment he's using.
Now you just saw the thing that you can't do with your phone. See that small creep out? That's the camera.
So I can look over his shoulder at the workbench. I can still get close-ups of whatever his hands are doing.
You can kind of plan your shots ahead of time. You can't do what's called a reveal. You know, like somebody's doing something and you pull back to see something else, or you push in to see something you hadn't seen before. You don't get to do that with the phones. That's my gripe, is that if you know you want to do something with a longer lens, or you want some motion, if you're having to do sports and you're trying to follow the ball or whatever, come see me as this is a capstone class?
Yes.
So you can get a camera begrudgingly, because if you haven't had camera training, I'm like, But we'll talk it through. I'll give you as much help as I can. You can keep the video camera in automatic, so you're not having to. It'll do the same thing as your phone does. It takes care of your white balance. It takes care of your shutter speed. It'll control your audio as well. So think about what you're doing. Use the best tool you can. Oftentimes the phone is the best tool, but if you're trying to do something to save, if you're working in a sawmill or something, there's people that know what they're doing and you don't. You want to be back far away. Get something you can shoot from a distance. We'll talk about it, but anyway.
And also tilt up, record some shots of his face, just to give me a new angle. I'll still do my wide, medium, tight, tight, tight from this position, and it will also follow that other rule in our B-roll guidelines of staying on the same side of the line, because Neil is always facing to the right side of my frame in each of the shots, whether at this.
That's his dog shot, that meter. Now he can go, if he wants to flip over to the other side, that's okay, because we've taken him away from the shot for a few moments, and now we can go to the other side if we had to. We're wrapping up on time. Who's got questions? Anybody? I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk. Let me look at my list real quick. Yeah, if you can find a background that's interesting, go for it. The blank wall is like your last resort, hopefully. I struggle in this building, and you understand why, to shoot interviews in front of a bookcase, because nobody's got books anymore. And that was always because books are different colors, they're colorful, it looks academic, you know. There's things, everything we've got in this building is like gray walls and monitors and flat desks for computers. So, but try to find an interesting background or backdrop for the person. Think it's best, if you know your story before you go out, to know how it's going to end. Some novelists want to write stories that they don't know how it's, they say if they knew how it was going to end, they didn't want to write it, you know, that they already knew. Other novelists want to know how to land the plane, how to get to where they're going, and then work backwards. For me, it's always been the best to know what the story is going to be ahead of time, and I've already got like an opening shot and a closing shot in my head. Pictures of signs are about as exciting as kissing your aunt on the mouth. It's just friggin' words. Drives me bats, but that's what a lot of, and you do that starting out, you can't help. But if you're going, let's say you're going to do a story about the CDC, don't get a shot of the sign that says CDC. You've already told the people, we're at the CDC. Get a shot with a sign in the foreground, but the building behind, or following a car over to the sign, like on a wider shot. You can still show words and signs and where you are, but Jesus, don't just put up a full screen of words. I mean, just do a graphic in that case. Why are you even out there? That's just me. What else? All right. Well, get outside and play. It's a pretty day. Or you got more stuff for them?
I just have to tell them just a few things. Any questions, guys?
I teach a production class Monday, Wednesday afternoons, 1:50. But I'm kind of busy setting it up ahead of time till 3:40 or something. Otherwise, and I go to lunch. Otherwise, come by. You're welcome to come by any time and just ask questions. If you really want to find out some stuff, or you're going to spend some time, shoot me an email. Let's set up some time. I don't have specific office hours other than, I'm always in the shop unless I'm teaching or at lunch between 8:30 or 9 and 4:30 or so. So if you've got questions about how do you want to get something done, and Professor V, for whatever reason, wouldn't have the answer or says come see me, you can come see me. You can ask questions about production stuff. Happy to help. Cool? All right.